It was supposed to be my dream home, a quaint two-story nestled on Cypress Hill, quiet neighbors, blossoming gardens, and a picturesque pond behind my backyard. I'm Jake Morland, a laid-back tech consultant who decided to abandon city chaos for suburban peace. Well, peace wasn't exactly in the cards. Not once Karen became my personal nightmare. Picture me stepping onto my porch one lazy afternoon, all set to fish in that cozy backyard pond, only to discover the water's surface shimmering black with something toxic and putrid. It smelled like gasoline, and it definitely wasn't there yesterday. I squinted across the fence, suspicious. Over the past month, Karen, our newly elected HOA president, had pestered me about everything: my mailbox color, the unapproved bird feeder in my yard, and even the way I trimmed my hedges. But messing with my pond? That was a whole new level. Little did I know that filthy sheen on the water was only the beginning. By the time I found out just how far Karen was willing to go dumping barrels of industrial waste and forging official HOA documents, I'd be calling the EPA, the police, and every legal favor I could muster. Buckle up, because if you thought petty HOA fines were bad, wait till you see what happens when Karen decides you're her #1 target. Before we dive headfirst into this insane ride, smash that like button if you've ever dealt with HOA drama, and subscribe for more real-life suburban escapades. Trust me, you won't believe the plot twists in this saga. Got an HOA horror story of your own? Drop it in the comments so I know I'm not alone. Now grab a snack, settle in, and brace yourself for the wild tale of how I went from easygoing newcomer to public enemy #1 in Cypress Hill, and how Karen's desperate antics blew up in her face. When I first moved to Cypress Hill, I was giddy at the thought of small-town charm. My modest Cape Cod-style house overlooked a serene pond. Birds chirped in the morning, and the sunset cast golden light over the water in the evening. Best of all, the neighbors seemed friendly, well, most of them. A few gave me cautious smiles. A couple avoided eye contact. I chalked it up to standard suburb shyness. During my first weekend, the local HOA hosted a welcome barbecue in the park. That's where I met Karen. She wore crisp khakis, a collared shirt with HOA president embroidered on the sleeve, and carried a binder that looked more like a weapon than an organizer. She cornered me by the lemonade stand, introduced herself with a tight-lipped grin, and immediately asked if I'd read the HOA manual. I had not. "I'm just hoping to enjoy my new place," I said, trying to be polite. Karen nodded in that condescending way people do when they're about to educate you. "Our guidelines ensure a perfect community, Jake," she chirped. "No unapproved paint colors, no unregistered water features or yard art, and definitely no changes to landscaping without filing forms." It felt overbearing, but I figured, hey, maybe that's just how hoes run, so I gave her a casual smile and left it at that, unaware that this woman would soon sabotage my entire peaceful plan. Less than a week later, I installed a simple wooden bird feeder out back. I love watching cardinals and finches. By day's end, an orange citation notice was pinned to my front door. Violation, unauthorized yard feature. Fine, $50 per day until removed. My eyebrows shot up. $50 a day? Over a bird feeder? I shot Karen an email, politely asking if there was some misunderstanding. She responded with a screenshot of an obscure line in the HOA manual referencing no freestanding structures exceeding 24 inches. My feeder was 26 inches tall. I tried reason. "Surely there's some flexibility? It's just for birds." Her reply, "Rules are rules. You want a feeder? Fill out an architectural request form. Wait for board approval." I removed the feeder to avoid racking up fines. That was strike one for me apparently. I was now on Karen's radar. A few days later, I spotted weird spots of oily residue near the pond's edge. I figured maybe it was runoff from the road or an old septic issue. I decided to keep an eye on it. Meanwhile, Karen started piling on reminders. My mailbox was faded and needed repainting in an HOA-approved color from the binder's palette. My grass was half an inch too tall. My compost bin released. Odors. Every time I complied, she'd find something else. I had a suspicion she just liked pushing me around. Maybe she disliked new homeowners, or maybe she had an ego trip about controlling the pond. But I had no proof yet. One evening, I took out the trash after dusk and caught a glimpse of headlights near the far side of the pond. My property is mostly fenced, but the back near the water is open. I heard the distinct rumble of an engine, then a splash, like something being dumped. By the time I grabbed a flashlight, the vehicle sped off. In the morning, I found two half-submerged barrels at the pond's edge. They reeked like chemicals. Furious, I called the local environmental hotline. They recommended taking photos, roping off the area, and waiting for an inspector. I shot an email to the HOA board Karen included describing the barrels and my fear for wildlife. Karen's response was snappy. That's not under HOA jurisdiction. The pond is your personal property, so any cleanup or disposal is your responsibility. Do not contact us further about personal issues. My personal property included the water, but the entire neighborhood enjoyed the scenic view. I was stunned at her callousness. The next day, an official-looking letter arrived. Dear Mr. Morland, Cypress Hill HOA has received reports that your pond poses an environmental hazard, potentially breeding mosquitoes and causing odors. You must rectify these conditions immediately to protect community well-being. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $100. I nearly blew a gasket. Some unknown creep had dumped hazardous waste on my land, and Karen was slapping me with a huge penalty for it. I emailed her again, pointing out the obvious. Those barrels are not mine. I discovered them last night. I'm waiting on an environmental inspector. She replied with a single line, you have 48 hours to remove them or the fines begin. I realized this was no coincidence. Something told me Karen was behind those barrels. Why else would the HOA be so quick to fine me for hazardous conditions? But before I could prove any of it, I got a knock at the door. Kim, one of the quieter board members I'd met briefly at the welcome barbecue. She looked pale, clutching a thick manila folder. Jake, she said in a shaky whisper, I'm sorry to bother you like this, but I've discovered something in the HOA office records that might help your case. She handed me the folder. Inside were copies of invoices for landscaping chemicals suspiciously labeled with vague codes. They weren't from the usual garden supply store. This was a commercial chemical distributor that specialized in industrial solvents, the same type of product now contaminating my pond. I stared at Kim, stunned. Where'd you get these? Karen left them in the main HOA filing cabinet, she explained, voice trembling. I think she forgot to lock them away. I was searching for old guidelines about fence heights when I stumbled on these. I started connecting the dots, then I remembered. How you mentioned those barrels. My chest felt like it was caving in. So the HOA actually paid for these chemicals with association dues? Kim nodded grimly. I'm afraid so. Karen made them look like routine pest control expenses, but the amount's a huge way. Beyond anything, we'd need for a few wasps or mosquitoes. And the timeline lines up with your pond contamination. My stomach churned. This is bigger than just petty sabotage. She's funneling HOA money into some kind of chemical dump scheme. Kim gave a frightened shrug. I think she wants you gone, and she's not above using association funds to do it. I don't know the details, I just know I can't stand. Bye. People are afraid to speak up, but I have family who loves fishing in that pond. I won't let her ruin it. I thanked Kim profusely, scanning the invoices. Some were initialed KW in looping script. This was a smoking gun if ever. I saw one. Not only was Karen personally involved, she was roping the entire HOA into potential criminal liability. I'm going to the police with these, I said. And the EPA. This changes everything. Kim forced a brave smile. Good. And Jake, be careful. If Karen figures out who turned these over, I'll keep your name out of it, I promised. But I'm not letting her get away with it. Not anymore. I decided enough was enough. I installed 3 motion sensor cameras around the backyard, plus a small trail cam closer to the pond. My friend Nina, an environmental science major, helped me take water samples. It tested positive for volatile chemicals like industrial solvents. Definitely not random household garbage. Nina also noticed footprints near the barrels, partially hidden in the mud, leading back toward the main street. We took photos, documented everything. Meanwhile, the 48-hour deadline loomed, and Karen sent a second letter threatening immediate fines. I reached out to the local state environmental agency, who advised me to keep the barrels in place until their inspector arrived so they could sample properly. That put me in direct conflict with Karen's deadline. On the second night of having the cameras set up, I got a motion alert on my phone around her. Bleary-eyed, I opened the camera feed. My heart pounded. There was a figure by the pond wearing dark clothes and a hooded jacket. Then the person moved into a patch of light for a moment and I recognized Karen's face. She was lugging a smaller container, crouching near the water and pouring something in. I stared in disbelief, capturing screenshots as she scurried away. So she was actively dumping more chemicals? For what reason? Trying to escalate the pond hazard so I'd be forced to pay fines or even vacate. I stared at my phone's camera feed, the hairs on my neck prickling. This wasn't just random cruelty. It felt like a targeted campaign. If Karen's whole plan was to label me as the neighborhood's biggest polluter or push me to abandon the house, she was making progress. But I refused to cave. First thing next morning, I dropped by the local library to do some research. Karen had mentioned once that she'd rescued the neighborhood from a previous HOA president who didn't care about property values. Maybe there were old news articles or archived HOA newsletters that would shine a light on her pattern of behavior. Buried in the library's local archives, I found a stash of old Cypress Hill news clippings. Sure enough, I spotted an article titled, "HOA Feud Boils Over, President Resigns." The story detailed how Karen, then just a board member, had orchestrated a smear campaign against the ex-president, claiming they'd violated dozens of made-up rules. Another piece described bizarre allegations of dangerous chemicals in a neighbor's backyard shed exactly the kind of tactic she was using on me. The neighbor eventually moved away after what the paper called intense pressure from the HOA board. My blood ran cold. This wasn't Karen's first rodeo. She'd been pulling chemical stunts and forging violation notices for at least a year. I snapped photos of the articles and called Nina right away. "It's a pattern," I told her. "She's done this exact routine, smear them as a polluter, drive them out, and then take credit for saving the neighborhood from environmental harm." Nina let out a low whistle. "That's next level twisted. You think she's looking to buy your property cheap once you're forced to leave?" My mind reeled. That or she just can't stand any challenge to her authority. Either way, I'm not rolling over. With a renewed sense of purpose, I compiled the clippings into a single PDF along with my previous evidence. I'd give them all to the detective and the EPA investigator. Let them see Karen's entire mo this time. She wasn't scaring me into submission. I saved the footage to my hard drive, plus multiple backups. Then I dialed the police non-emergency line. They noted my complaint, but said I'd need to file a formal report and submit the evidence to a detective in the morning. Sure enough, I woke up to find another large black stain drifting across the pond's surface. Furious, I confronted Karen at her door. She opened it a crack, brandishing her phone like a shield. "Karen," I said, voice trembling but controlled, "I have footage of you dumping chemicals in my water. You want to explain that?" She blinked, then smirked. "You can't be serious, Jake. If you have a problem with your pond, it's not my fault. Now, if you'll excuse me." She tried to close the door. I thrust my foot forward, not letting her shut it. "I'm reporting you. This is criminal, you know that." Karen hissed, "Move your foot or I'll call the police for trespassing." I realized it was pointless to argue right then. "Fine," I said quietly, stepping away. "Enjoy your day, Karen." I brought my videos to the police station that morning, footage of her near the pond, plus timestamps. The detective I spoke with was immediately concerned, especially once I explained the presence of industrial solvents. They told me to contact the EPA Environmental Protection Agency as well, since this could be a major violation. The next day, an EPA investigator named Marisol came out. She tested the water, looked at the barrels, and watched the camera footage. Her expression was grim. "This is serious," she said. "Dumping hazardous materials into a body of water can lead to fines up to $50,000 per day or more, depending on the scale. If we prove it was deliberate, the person responsible can face criminal charges. And if it's linked to an HOA official, we're talking big consequences." A neighbor named Frank stepped forward with surprising info. He was an older gentleman who'd overheard Karen bragging about her connections at a local chemical supply store. She supposedly purchased industrial solvents for cleaning up the neighborhood. Frank found this suspicious. Frank showed me a partial receipt he'd taken a photo of because he suspected Karen might be up to no good. It listed several 5-gallon containers of X13 solvent. Frank recognized the brand from his days in auto repair. That same brand tested positive in my pond. Suddenly, we had a paper trail that could tie Karen directly to the chemicals. I handed everything over to the detective and the EPA investigator. The HOA scheduled an emergency meeting after rumors swirled that Karen might be under criminal investigation. The community center was packed. Many neighbors had no idea how far this had escalated. Karen stood at the front, arms folded, claiming, "These allegations are absurd. Jake has fabricated videos. He's the one polluting the pond with God knows what. I was merely checking the perimeter to ensure compliance." I marched up with a USB stick in hand. This has the raw footage. You can see Karen carrying containers. At M, pouring them into my water. I also presented the partial receipt Frank had. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's face paled, but she shot back, "That receipt isn't mine. Frank must have stolen it, or faked it. We can't trust him." Neighbors started yelling, "My kids fish in that pond, Karen. We've had enough of your petty fines. You're going to jail for this?" The chaos was explosive. The HOA treasurer tried to restore order, but half the room was calling for Karen's immediate resignation, and the other half seemed stunned into silence. 2 days later, the police, armed with my footage, Frank's receipt, info, and the EPA's water sample results, finally arrested Karen at her house. The official charges included felony dumping of hazardous materials, possible environmental terrorism if proven she did it to force me out, and forgery since she apparently forged some HOA documents to authorize her nighttime checks. The EPA slapped her with a potential $200,000 fine right off the bat, with more to come if additional contamination was found. Meanwhile, the rest of the HOA board members panicked. They had no idea Karen was engaging in these stunts. My pond was a disaster zone. The chemicals killed fish and wildlife, and the soil around the water tested positive for contamination. The cleanup estimate soared to $90,000. I was worried I'd be stuck paying it, but the EPA assured me that if Karen was found criminally liable, she and any conspirators would foot the bill. The HOA, already reeling from a wave of negative publicity, scrambled to distance themselves from Karen. She'd apparently funneled HOA funds into Karen's beautification projects, which might have been used to buy solvents. If so, the board might be partially liable. They collectively fired Karen, removed her from any official role, and offered to help cover the pond remediation to avoid a bigger class action meltdown from neighbors. In a bold attempt at self-defense, Karen's lawyer released a statement claiming that I had been secretly disposing of chemicals in my pond for tax fraud or some bizarre angle. They alleged I faked the camera footage. My heart pounded with anxiety. What if the press believed her? But digital forensics from the police validated my video's authenticity, plus I had multiple backups and logs from the camera manufacturer. I even had Nina, my environmental science friend, and her lab results to prove the timeline of contamination. So Karen's blame game flopped. By the time the local news stations finished their coverage, Karen looked like a desperate villain spinning wild stories to save herself. After a grueling 2 months of legal battles, the verdict came. Karen was found guilty of illegal dumping and environmental sabotage. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in county jail and slapped her with $250,000 in fines. The EPA also declared she'd have to pay restitution for the pond cleanup, an additional $100,000, and cover my legal fees. It was a massive sum, one that likely bankrupted her. With Karen gone, the HOA board restructured. They issued a formal apology to me and passed new measures ensuring no single president could wield that much power again. Best of all, the board collectively paid for immediate pond restoration to keep peace with the community. The day remediation crews finished, I sat on my new dock, gazing at the fresh water sparkling in the sun. Just as I was thinking, life could finally return to normal, my phone buzzed a call from the local TV station, Channel 7 News. They wanted an interview about the HOA president who polluted. Normally, I'd decline, but I felt the public deserved the truth. The next day, a reporter named Julie Huang arrived with a cameraman, wanting to film by the pond. She asked me a series of questions: how I discovered the contamination, why I suspected Karen, and what it felt like to be vindicated by the EPA's findings. As the interview wrapped up, a neighbor sprinted over, shouting my name. Panting, she stammered, "Jake, we've got a problem. Karen's lawyers are distributing flyers around town, claiming you staged the entire pollution to defraud insurance." The reporter's ears perked up. "Any comment on that?" she asked. Me, eyes bright, my stomach clenched in anger. But I forced a steady tone. "I have reams of evidence that the police, the EPA, and the HOA have all validated. Karen is desperate. She can spread whatever lies she wants, but the facts are on my side. Julie turned to the neighbor. Would you mind sharing those flyers? This could be another twist to the story. The neighbor handed Julie a crumpled paper reading, "Beware Jake Morland's scam. He orchestrated the chemical dumping to extort the HOA for money. The truth will come out in court." I felt a surge of both rage and a strange calm. "She's doubling down," I said quietly. "Even after the courts, the agencies, and the law have pinned her as the culprit, she's still attacking me. That's the Karen way, I guess. So, how do you plan to respond?" The reporter asked. I took a moment, glancing at the camera lens, thinking about everyone who's ever been steamrolled by an HOA bully. I plan to keep living my life, enjoying my pond, and letting the legal system do its job. This pond's back to being beautiful, and I'm not running from some last-ditch smear campaign. Later that evening, I scanned social media. Sure enough, Karen's supporters posted the flyers online, calling me the real villain, but the comment section quickly filled with neighbors defending me. Nina posted the original water test results, Kim posted the invoices she uncovered, and even Tom, the new HOA president, chimed in to confirm the association's official stance. Jake is 100% innocent. Karen acted alone. By midnight, the backlash turned on Karen's remaining supporters, who slunk off or deleted their posts. My phone buzzed with messages from relieved residents praising me for staying strong. I realized that, at last, the community was healing. Karen's poison, literal and metaphorical, had been purged, and while there would always be a bit of tension in the air, Cypress Hill felt more united. Maybe I'd finally enjoy the quiet life I came for. I'd never wanted to become a local hero or a whistleblower. I just wanted to watch birds and enjoy the quiet. But when you face a tyrant like Karen, sometimes you have to stand up, and sometimes even the EPA will come fight by your side. Karen's final downfall was swift and public. The community she claimed to protect turned against her once. They saw the evidence of her sabotage. With crippling fines, a criminal record, and her reputation in shreds, she left Cypress Hill. Meanwhile, my pond's back to its tranquil beauty, and the HOA runs smoothly without her iron grip. If this proves anything, it's that no bully HOA president or not can outrun justice, especially when a camera is rolling.